Hi everybody, I'm Angela Hart, and welcome to the Heart of New York show. Today we're doing an episode about autism in the workplace, and I have a very distinguished panel here with me. I'm going to start on my right and ask each one of them to introduce themselves and tell you a brief statement about what they do and what their goals are and why they're interested in autism. You, sir.
Yes, my name is Joseph Lento, and I'm a conservatory-trained professional musician. I'm a New York State licensed teacher of orchestral music, grades K through 12, and I'm a licensed school district administrator. I've been teaching for 33 years, and I have a very special interest in teaching music to students of all abilities, with a special interest in those with special needs. And because I find that the power of music, the inherent qualities and power of music, brings students together. It brings out their best qualities. It makes them uncover things about themselves they never knew, either emotionally or academically or creatively. So I have a real special interest in forwarding this agenda.
Thank you so much. And you, sir, would you like to share with the audience about yourself?
I'm Knut Witkowski. I'm a computational biostatistician and geneticist. And I started about 3 years ago to work on autism, on the genetics of autism, and we compared nonverbal to verbal cases and identified risk factors suggesting which intervention might prevent children from becoming nonverbal. And I'm very passionate about that. And in the course of that, I also learned that I am on the spectrum, something that I hadn't known until I started talking with people who diagnosed autism, and then I realized, well, might be me.
So interesting. And by the way, what did well, I'd like to know later about what your friends or family, how they reacted. We'll come back to that in 1 second, okay? You, sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Angela, for having me here. My name is Kong Do. My day job is I lead the global strategy group for Samsung, and I was previously the chief strategy officer for Merck, Tyco Electronics, and Lenovo. I'm also the parent of an autistic boy, and he was diagnosed when he was 2. He just turned 14 this past month. And so for the last 12 years, my wife and I have been actively engaged in helping autistic causes, organizations, and families. I have the honor of serving on the board of Autism Speaks. I've founded several autism-related organizations, one of which is Identifor, which works to help autistic teenagers make the transition to adulthood. We want to help parents and educators identify what a person is really good at, and so that we can build educational and vocational plans to make the most out of that person's lives.
And that's what we're going to speak a lot about in this segment. And would you like to share about your life briefly?
Right. My name is Eli Gottesman. I'm 18 years old. I'll be entering the College of Staten Island as a freshman in the fall to earn a degree in history, to study as a history major, and to hopefully one day be employed as a qualified historian to specialize in medieval history and the American Revolution.
Excellent, excellent. Knut, just briefly, I haven't asked you this before. Since you've been self-diagnosed, and correctly, I'm sure.
No, I'm not self-diagnosed. I had myself, went testing.
Oh, okay.
When I became suspicious.
Okay.
And so I was tested by a qualified
Yes.
person.
Well, I would respect your self-testing anyway, but anyway. So when you shared the results, or have you shared the results with any of your friends, coworkers, or family members? And if you did, what has been their reaction, since you just learned this a year ago?
Okay, well, I'm a mathematician by training, and probably there would be no math without autism. I think that the type of rigidity in the thinking that is necessary in mathematics is probably something that people with autism, with their restricted interest, are particularly good at. And so nobody was really surprised.
Interesting. Well, you'll find this interesting. I actually have a math disability. And when I went to college, I actually graduated a year ago at this late age. And I was dreading the math. I saved it till the very end because I just knew I wasn't going to pass algebra. I went for tutoring. I did everything I could. And it became really upsetting to me because here I was about to get a degree at this late time, finally. And what am I going to do with the algebra? So I finally realized, my poor husband, I mean, I would stick with one lesson and so many tutoring experiences, and I would tell, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, just, I'm staying. I was like a maniac. And I would do, oh, I got it, okay, now I understand. I go back to do it, couldn't do it. And after a few weeks of this, and back and forth with the professor, I finally said, when I think back through the years, I must have a disability in math, because this is not normal. I have, a great GPA, and I'm fairly intelligent. What is it with this math stuff? And so I did find out, and I got a letter, and so I was able to take a personal finance class and get my degree. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had it. So it's interesting, our stories are kind of reversed, sort of, right?
And I think that there's a lesson to be learned, and that is autism wasn't really recognized until very recently, and I think 50 years ago or so. One reason for that was that people were more accepting that different people have different qualifications and different habits, and that was just fine, and nobody cared so much. Now society is getting much more rigid, and everybody has to fulfill all the tests and be up on all the scales. And if there's some divergence, then this is something that is rejected. I think that if society were more accepting, many people wouldn't have even a diagnosis of autism. But on the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, those who don't develop language, I think, need help, because I think language is to autism what pneumonia is to the common cold. The underlying condition is something you can live with. But if you have a cold, you're more likely to get pneumonia, and then you die of the pneumonia. If you are autistic, you are more likely to lose your language, and then your whole life you have to live in assisted living.
Not good, not good.
It's not at all surprising to me that you're a mathematical genius and you are mathematically challenged, right?
Beyond.
Because work by Professor Howard Gardner out of Harvard and his colleagues would basically say, it's absolutely expected to be that way. He believes, and his colleagues believe, there are 8 innate human abilities, right? One of which is mathematical logical abilities, right? Another could be visual spatial skills. A third would be music. A fourth would be bodily kinesthetic ability, things that you can do with your body, for example. There are 8 of these. And he and his colleagues would advocate and believe, and their research would show, every one of us has a different mixture of each one of these 8 abilities, right? No one is great at all 8. In fact, you would expect a person to have a particular strength or 2, right? But not great at everything. So it's not at all surprising, right? And that's what we try to do at Identifor, is to try to help parents identify and understand the profile of their children.
Excellent, excellent. And tell us, Kang Do, tell us a little more about how you see autistic people getting into the workforce and any challenges or advancement, and about their abilities. What else would you like to share about that?
The work that we did at Autism Speaks shows that over the course of the next decade, somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million autistic teenagers will become adults. And unless we go and do something very different, 70% of these adults will become unemployed. The vast majority will continue to rely on parents for housing, transportation, and so forth. So that is a tragedy in lost lives that we are working to prevent. My wife and I believes that every single person has the right to expect a meaningful, fulfilling life. So what we try to do in building Identifor is to help parents and educators identify what that strength is, what that ability is, because if you identify it, you then can build upon it. And by building upon it, you then can help this person go to school, if that's the right thing, get the right kinds of job, and then through other tools, live a fulfilling life.
Excellent. And so tell us more about your program and what have been your challenges in getting it out to the public and into the education system.
Sure. Well, one thing that we see of individuals on the spectrum, and Eli, I don't know if you saw this in school, pen and paper tests are very difficult.
Yeah.
Right? It just takes far longer time to focus on
Yeah.
writing pen and paper and tests. And so often for individuals on the spectrum, school-based tests do not tell the full story, even in the
Yeah.
areas that schools assess.
Right. Like the state, I would always have problems with the state tests, no matter what it would be, Regents or even the ELA and the state math tests in junior high school. It was always like, the math that would always get to me. And before that was English. English I would always get 2s. Every ELA would be a 2 and a 2 and another 2 until I passed the English region. But before that, like, my comprehension was not there with the reading and the all the things like that. It was just difficult at the time. But now, now that's not the case. But any of these tests were difficult with questioning sometimes, making mistakes. These things were just, they would happen sometimes, and it would be like anxiety provoking at times.
Yep. So what we've tried to do at Identifor is to try to reduce the anxiety, try to get a better read of a person's true abilities
Yeah.
It's
in a
perfect.
completely different way.
Because there were times I was like really like panicking over like a math equation that I couldn't figure out, and then I would have to, go back to it. Then when I would go back to it, I still wouldn't understand, and it was
I get
just
that. I get that.
it was just really like difficult at that time.
And so the path that we took, working with award-winning psychologists and computer science experts, artificial intelligence and so forth, is we use games. Games because I know with my own son and many other teenagers I've seen, adults too for that matter, is that they'll play games for as long as you allow them to play. It's a much more engaging thing than taking a test, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so we designed all these different games that from the gamer's perspective, you're just playing games.
Can we get a close-up of that, maybe in the center camera or on this camera here? Are we able to get a close-up?
Right.
No.
And so, well, you can go to the App Store, right, the Apple or the Android App Store, and just download these games, Identifor, right, and you can download the games. All you do is you play the games. And behind the scenes, it's collecting all kinds of information that our system, the artificial intelligence, then analyze, which then gives you a better sense of your abilities. I mean, I'll give you an example. You were talking about math.
Right.
Let me see if I can find greater. Right. So here, this is a game. Right. You can play this, and you basically say, which one is greater? The perimeter of this triangle with that, right? Or the circumference of that circle. But all you're doing is that you're playing a game from your perspective, but behind the scenes, it's measuring mathematical abilities, it's measuring multitasking
Time and
skills,
reaction.
time reaction, so forth, right? It's measuring a lot of things. Another game, right? Joseph, it's in your area. This is looking at musical abilities, right?
Oh, that's what he plays, the trumpet.
A trumpet. Do you know what this is? Anyone knows?
No.
Right. So you just say, I don't know it. It will tell you, right? This is Hungarian dance by Brahms.
Wow.
Right? And then you can continue on to the next clip. Anyone? Right?
I'm not really sure.
So you just keep on, and then somewhere along the way,
He doesn't want to give the answer because he wants that to give the answer.
and somewhere along the way, it will come back and give you those same clips again after it's taught you what it is.
Right.
But what Mr. Doe's application is doing is something that goes back to a project called Ground Zero that was developed at Harvard called a spiral feedback loop. And in music, we have an instant spiral feedback loop where not only does the teacher instantly know what the student is doing, the student knows. They may not have the language yet, but they know if it's right or they know if it's wrong. And that's where this application comes in because it's an assisted spiral feedback loop. It completes the loop for the student by reminding them and pointing out what's correct or incorrect. I think it's really great.
Thank you. All right, so this is from the person's perspective. It's just you're playing games. But the power really comes in what it's able to do for parents and educators. You then can go to what we call the dashboard, right? This is my son, right? And it's talking about his executive function abilities and his multiple intelligence capabilities, right? His interests. We know Benjamin's weak point is linguistic ability. So not surprisingly, you see that linguistic skills is the smallest wedge of that pie. Right? Then when you click on it, it tracks his progress over time. Right? So he is among the 20th percentile of everyone who have played our games on linguistic abilities. Right? So it provides teachers, parents, the ability to monitor and track progress on different dimensions, executive functions, multiple intelligence. Right? Likewise, the opposite is that we know his strong suit is music, and he sets the bar. He has the high score, and he wasn't always there, but then over time he got there.
He got there over time by using the program or throughout external methods?
We don't know, right? The reality is it's the person, and the person learns all different ways. All we know is that this is a tool that then can track the person's ability to develop.
Over time. So for
over
instance,
time.
was that how many months or years was that with your
This
son?
is a year and a half.
So
right?
over, okay. You had a question?
Yeah, well, actually, a comment, and it speaks to something you said, Eli, and of course to this wonderful application. We mentioned IEP before, Individual Education Plan, and what I see this doing is making that a live document instead of a document that has a list of goals. It would really have the teacher and the student, and the parents would be linked to it as well.
Absolutely.
So everybody could really focus on making that document a living, breathing document so we can help develop the skills that people will need for employment later on. And if I might, Eli, you mentioned you were a 2, you had said.
2.5, yeah.
I'd like people to know that these state exams are based on scores of 1 to 4, with 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest. And I don't particularly like designating someone by a number, but that's the reality of it. But the teacher would know Eli was a 2.5 long before, if they used Mr. Doe's application, because they would have been involved in the process. We wouldn't have to wait for the test to find out Joseph doesn't know something. We know it before the test, and that's important, intervention.
Wow.
Yes, the thing that we are working on right now to enhance our tool is for each one of these dimensions. Later on, and probably in a couple of months, through our website, we will provide teachers and parents and the individual the ability to go and perform specific exercises to enhance certain skills.
Oh.
Right, so if on executive function, if there is a start-stop or an engagement challenge, there will be, at our site, you just click on the link that then gives you a series of additional tools or exercises and so forth that then you can go and try to work on to build those skills. We'll then also provide IEP goals, right, which then could be built into IEPs to help the whole team work together to reinforce those skills.
Fabulous.
Right.
So it's
And
organic. It's organic. Yeah.
Right. And all of this, of course, is geared towards helping the individual identify a job that they might be interested in pursuing. So through our website, we also provide what's called the RIASEC profile. This is based upon work by John Holland out of Johns Hopkins. This has been going on for decades, right? We all may remember, you may have had to do this too, Eli. We remember taking a career interest exam or a survey in high school. Somewhere along the way, it tells you to be a doctor or
Right. I never took like a career interest exam, but my transition class, we talked about careers. We talked about, career options, looking online, things like that, lessons on it, but no, we never took like a test on like what your career is going to be. Like you're going to be a this. No, that's not how
Yeah, it's less an exam than it is just a survey of how you like to spend your time and what you like to do. And through our tools, we then give what this profile, right? So it's called the RIASEC profile. So are you a realistic, conventional, artistic, social kind of person? This whole profile. And then it goes on to show for people with those profile through the Department of Labor statistics for decades worth of data, It says those people with that profile tend to have done well in these kinds of jobs. It then goes on to describe the job. It then goes on to describe in that job, these are the activities that you would be
Wow.
performing.
Wow.
These are the skills that you would need to have. These are the tools that you would be using in that job. Right? So this makes career exploration much, much easier. It's
Oh,
aimed
yes.
at things, how you like to spend your time.
Right.
Then it gives you ideas of jobs that other people who have that profile have found rewarding.
I would like to add one of my personal experiences. Believe it or not, in my whole academic career, I haven't done a single multiple choice test.
Wow.
How is that?
Not a single. Because at that time, I grew up in Germany, and the belief was there is nothing really useful you can learn from a multiple choice test, because you're limiting whatever the student is allowed to do and how the student has to do it. It's a very limited way of testing. And what I see here is something where I think it can go back to the time before multiple choice
Wow.
and actually assess people in a much more comprehensive way.
Excellent. Isn't that
That's
true?
that's what we're trying to do. Fundamentally, we are trying to provide parents and educators a pointer, right? Try to point people in a direction that says, Eli has the ability in these particular areas, these particular interests, go and explore that, right? Because those are strengths that can be built upon.
Right.
So as an example, Eli is interested in history. How
Yes.
can this determine that?
It may not.
That would seem too abstract, right?
That would be too absurd. We can't do everything.
No, I know.
And-
I
and
just
so-
was curious, though.
And so for history, chances are we wouldn't have to identify it, but we also know that he has music interests, he has other interests that frankly may still be revealed as he plays
in this game. Right?
Yeah.
Very
wow.
And how did you get so interested in history?
I mean, it started when I was like really young. I was like 6 years old, and my parents introduced me to like the ancient civilizations first. Then I'm wrong. First it was like the prehistory. Then I went to civilizations. Then it went towards U.S. history, then world, and then like now my interest is like all over the place. So I'm interested in anything.
Great, you're a learner. You're a
When it
learner.
comes to history, like I mean, I mean that too. Like I still watch videos every day on my phone, on TV, because it interests me because it's about people, the world,
What makes things...
yeah, what happened then affects now, things like that.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. Any other thoughts on this side?
I just think it's a marvelous tool, and one of the things that we really have gotten away from in education is the creative aspect, and what Eli was just discussing. He has a unique interest in history, and we don't focus on those things. We keep cookie-cutting people, and by the time they graduate high school, they're 3 or 4 years behind where they may be 3 or 4 years ahead of what they want to do. I'm a firm believer that there should be an assessment, just like we were speaking about a few minutes ago.
I'm sorry, what did you mean they're behind versus ahead? You lost me.
We should focus more on what a student wants to do. Now, we should know that Eli likes history, and using Mr. Doe's app, and that interactive IEP, individual education plan, we know this. So we should be focusing more on the interests that the students have and giving them more of what they're good at, as opposed to giving them more of what we think they should be good at, which makes them less marketable.
Uh-huh.
What's been interesting, Joseph, is that over the course of developing all of these tools, we of course have worked with a lot of special educators some of whom really sees the value of this and have just volunteered, spent a lot of time helping us develop this, right? So there's lots of fundamentals that went into creating this. What we found surprising is that as this became available, we then started talking to school districts, other schools, and so forth. And while there's been some degree of interest, of course, people say, this is very interesting, interested in using it, and so forth. Practically, we've gotten very little traction when it gets into the classroom, right? And because sometimes the teachers are frankly just overwhelmed as it stands today, and this would be just one more thing that they would have to take care of in the classroom.
So where do you see a solution in terms of maybe outside of the daily school time to use it? I mean, how can it be?
Frankly, I believe this has to be something parents have to embrace, right? Parents and the individuals have the most at stake or the most interested in this, right? And so our challenge is how do we reach out to all of these families and parents? We had tried to do it through the schools, and we will continue to try to do it through the schools.
Sure.
Right? But it has been much more challenging than I thought it would be.
Well, if I can speak to that point, I think the problem is, and I'm well along enough in my career where I can speak my mind. I always spoke my mind, but especially now. The problem is this, and what Mr. Doe is saying is true. Education is not teacher-driven, it's not student-centered. They say it is, but it's not. The teachers really have very little autonomy. The bottom line is the teachers have to follow a prescription handed down by whatever the districts and the states say they should follow, which has nothing to do with teacher autonomy, student development. It has to do with following a rigid set
Bureaucracy.
it's bureaucracy. And until the teachers empower themselves and the families empower the teachers, we're not going to be able to get to that. But I think that we can implement this. It should be implemented, and it's probably not that far away. But that's really what is the stumbling point in the process.
The thing that I hear, and that is also my experience, is when parents rely on other groups doing what they want, it won't be done.
Groups like schools?
Schools, or in my case, pharmaceutical companies, the parents have to become more active, and if that doesn't happen, the parents won't get what they want.
Exactly.
Wow, this is interesting. So we have a wonderful tool here, and we have to get it into more families' psyches and knowledge and understanding. So we'll try to do that through television and through autism and special needs organizations, I suppose, is where
Yes.
you're going with that?
Yes, and best yet, it's free.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's almost heartbreaking that it's not being more utilized.
Well, we're still early on, so
Yeah,
we're just now
I know,
getting
I
the
know.
words out. So
I know it's early, but you want people to grab onto something like this and start helping others, right?
Absolutely. It has to take hold. And unless the education system really becomes student-centered, teacher-autonomous, nothing is going to change.
Okay. Thank you, panel. This has been very informative. And thank you, Mr. Doe, for teaching us about Identifor. If you'd like to share with the viewers the website address one more time.
you can go to our website, which is www.identifor, that's IDENTIFOR, and you can also go to the App Store, the Apple or the Android App Store. Just search for Identifor, and you can download the apps. And it's completely free.
And it will help measure the skills and aptitudes.
The abilities and the
abilities.
interests of these individuals.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, panel.
You're very
Thank you,
welcome.
viewers, for watching, and we hope that you'll tune in again.
Thank you, guys.
Goodbye now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spotlight on Biz, a TV show about community business outreach and environmental stewardship. The program airs on cable TV 7 nights per week during prime time hours. Spotlight on Biz. Spotlight on Biz is a venue for businesses to broadcast their services and unique contributions to our community. It's all about businesses taking care of people. It's all about businesses taking care of pets. It's all about businesses taking care of plants. And it's all about businesses giving back to our community. Spotlight on Biz. Spotlight on Biz, broadcasting testimonials and TV shows about our community businesses at work in our community. Spotlight on Biz. We have our spotlight on you. Spotlight on Biz.